Captain Lee Tejo stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the stars drift past through the main viewport. 300 years had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Federation, but humans still remained outsiders. The other alien species called them Deathworlders and kept them far from the important sectors of space. They said humans were too violent, too unpredictable for civilized company. Tejo did not mind the isolation. He commanded a patrol ship that watched the dangerous frontier between Federation space and the lawless regions beyond. His crew was small but skilled. Communications officer Park So-jin managed all incoming signals from her station near the captain's chair. Tactical specialist Kim Woo-bin monitored weapons and shields from his console. Chief engineer Yoon Da-eun kept their ship running smoothly from the engine room below. The morning started like any other. So-jin checked routine transmissions while Woo-bin ran diagnostics on their weapon systems. Da-eun sent reports about engine performance from engineering. The Indomitable moved slowly through empty space, following patrol routes that other species considered too risky. Then everything changed. "Captain," So-jin called out, her voice tight with worry. "I'm receiving a distress signal. It's encrypted and badly damaged." Tejo moved to her station. "Can you clean it up?" So-jin's fingers flew over her controls. Static filled the bridge speakers, mixed with distant sounds that made everyone's blood run cold. Screams echoed through the interference. Weapon fire crackled in the background. Then a voice broke through the noise, desperate and afraid. "They're taking our children," the voice gasped. "Someone please help us. Earth, if you can hear this message, please help us." The transmission cut to silence. Tejo felt ice form in his stomach. "Where did that come from?" "The Kepler mining colony," So-jin replied. "It's a Federation operation about 6 hours away. They extract rare minerals from asteroid fields." "How many people live there?" Woo-bin asked. 15,000, So-jin said, checking her records. "Mixed species, but about 30% human." Tejo nodded grimly. "Send the distress call to Federation Command. Priority transmission." While So-jin worked, Tejo studied the star charts. Kepler colony sat in a dangerous area where pirates sometimes raided shipping. But something about this attack felt different. The desperation in that voice suggested more than simple piracy. Admiral Veltar's image appeared on the main screen 20 minutes later. The Centaurian official looked bored as he reviewed the distress call. His blue skin had the pale color that meant he was annoyed at being disturbed. "A minor piracy incident," Veltar said with a wave of his thin hand. "We'll dispatch a response team within 6 weeks. Standard procedure for outer rim situations." 6 weeks? Tejo could not hide his shock. "Admiral, there are 15,000 civilians at that colony. The outer rim carries certain risks, Captain. The colonists knew this when they accepted assignments there. Maintain your patrol route and file a proper report." The transmission ended before Tejo could argue further. So-jin looked up from her station, her face pale. "Captain, I found something in the distress call. There's metadata hidden in the signal." "What kind of metadata?" "Slave marker codes." So-jin's voice dropped to a whisper. "This wasn't a pirate raid. It was harvesters." Woo-bin cursed under his breath. Every spacer knew about the harvesters. They were the galaxy's most feared slavers, aliens who captured exotic species for underground markets. But they usually stayed far from Federation space, picking on unprotected worlds and isolated ships. "Are you sure?" Tejo asked. So-jin nodded. "The codes are definitely harvester. But Captain, they've never attacked a Federation colony before. This is something new." Tejo stared at the star charts again. Kepler colony was 6 hours away at maximum speed. The official response team would take 6 weeks to arrive. By then, every civilian would be gone, sold to collectors across the galaxy or worse. "Sir," came Da-eun's voice over the intercom from engineering. "I need to speak with you privately." Tejo made his way down to the engine room. Da-eun waited by the main reactor, her usual calm expression replaced by worry. She was the most steady member of his crew, never showing emotion unless something truly serious had happened. "My younger brother works at Kepler colony," she said without introduction. "Yoon Min-ho. He's a mining engineer." Tejo felt the weight of command settle on his shoulders. This was no longer about following orders or Federation protocol. One of his crew had family in danger. "Da-eun, I'm not asking you to risk the ship for my brother," she interrupted. "But those harvesters took 15,000 people. Someone needs to do something." Tejo looked around the engine room. The Indomitable was not a warship. It carried light weapons for dealing with pirates, not for fighting harvester fleets. Taking on slavers would be suicide for any normal crew, but humans were not normal. The other species called them Deathworlders for good reasons. Earth had been a hostile planet that created hostile people. Humans were stronger, faster, and more aggressive than most galactic citizens. The Federation kept them on the frontier, precisely because they could handle dangers that would destroy other crews. Tejo made his decision. "All hands to stations," he announced over the ship's communication system. "We're changing course for Kepler Colony." So-Jin looked up from her console as he returned to the bridge. "Captain Admiral Veltar ordered us to maintain patrol." "Admiral Veltar is 6 weeks away from Kepler Colony," Tejo replied. "We're 6 hours away." "Wubin, plot a course at maximum speed, sir. This could mean court-martial," Wubin warned as his hands moved over the navigation controls. Tejo settled into his captain's chair and looked at his crew. So-Jin, young but brilliant, who could make their communication systems do impossible things. Wubin, steady and reliable, who never missed a target. Dayun, whose engineering skills had saved their ship a dozen times. They were Deathworlders. They came from a planet that tried to kill them every day. So they learned to fight back against impossible odds. The Federation wanted them to be civilized, to follow rules and wait for proper authority. But proper authority was 6 weeks away, and innocent people were suffering right now. "Then we get court-martialed," Tejo said calmly. "Engage maximum speed. Let's remind the galaxy what Deathworlders do when someone threatens our people." The Indomitable turned toward Kepler Colony and jumped to faster-than-light speed. Behind them, the safe patrol route grew distant. Ahead lay unknown dangers and certain consequences. But Captain Lee Tejo and his crew were Deathworlders. They had never learned to abandon their own. The Indomitable dropped out of faster-than-light speed at the edge of the Kepler system. Captain Tejo expected to find wreckage and debris. Instead, he saw something much worse. Kepler Colony looked almost normal from a distance. The main habitat dome still floated in their asteroid field, connected by transport tubes and docking arms. Mining platforms moved slowly between the rocks following their programmed routes. Everything appeared peaceful and organized, but no lights shone from the habitat windows. No communication signals came from the colony. No ships moved in or out of the docking bays. "It's too quiet," Communications Officer So-Jin said from her station. "No radio traffic at all. Life signs?" Tejo asked. Tactical Specialist Wubin checked his sensors. "Nothing, Captain. But the colony's automated systems are still running. Someone turned off life support in the living areas but kept the mining equipment working." That detail made Tejo's blood run cold. The attackers had not destroyed Kepler Colony. They had taken everyone and left the valuable mining operation intact. This was not random piracy. This was organized, professional kidnapping. "Captain," So-Jin called out, "I'm detecting escape pod signatures." "Lots of them. Survivors?" "No, sir, the pods are gone. I'm reading launch signatures for every escape pod in the colony." "Someone took them all." Tejo understood immediately. 15,000 people meant 15,000 escape pods. The attackers had not let anyone flee. They had captured every single person in the colony and taken their escape pods to make sure no one could follow. "Take us in closer," he ordered. "Security Chief Baek Junseo, prepare a boarding team." Junseo's voice came over the intercom from the security office. "Already suited up, Captain. Give me 10 minutes to sweep the main habitat." While Junseo and his team prepared to board the colony, Tejo studied the tactical display. Wubin had identified the approach routes the attackers used. Burn marks on several asteroids showed where ships had landed. Scorch patterns on the habitat domes indicated precise weapon strikes that disabled defenses without destroying valuable infrastructure. Professional work, Wubin observed. They knew exactly what they were doing. 20 minutes later, Junseo reported from inside the main habitat. "Captain, you need to see this." The colony's computers recorded everything. The security recordings played on the bridge's main screen. Tejo watched in growing anger as alien ships surrounded Kepler Colony with military precision. The attackers wore armor that identified them as harvesters, but these were not random raiders. They moved like soldiers following a detailed plan. The colony's defenses had been overwhelmed in minutes. Security forces managed only token resistance before being stunned and captured. Then came the systematic processing of civilians. The recording showed harvester troops separating colonists by species, age, and physical condition. Families were torn apart as parents and children were loaded into different transport ships. The efficiency was horrifying to watch. They cataloged everyone like inventory, Junseo reported over the radio. Different groups for different purposes. The humans got special treatment. On screen, Taeho watched a large harvester in ornate armor examining human children, with the cold attention of someone evaluating livestock. The alien's translator rendered his words in emotionless Federation standard. Premium stock, the harvester leader declared. Deathworld specimens always bring high prices. Their adaptability and pain tolerance make them valuable for specialized buyers. Taeho's hands clenched into fists. The alien was discussing human children like they were products to be sold. Captain, Science Officer Cho Hee-jin called from her station. The harvesters left something behind. A message specifically for Earth forces. The recording showed the same ornate harvester standing in the colony's main corridor. Behind him, human prisoners knelt with their hands bound. The alien looked directly into the camera with what might have been amusement. Deathworld scum, he began in accented Federation standard. Your Federation calls you too savage for civilized space, yet you cower behind their rules like frightened children. Your people scream for help, but you'll follow protocol while we break them in our processing centers. The alien gestured to the bound prisoners. We've studied your species. Your apex predators hobbled by morality. How amusing to see killers pretending to be civilized. The message continued with coordinates to a location deep in the shattered nebula. We are War Master Krextall of the Thikari Harvesters. Come to Maw's End if you have courage, Deathworlders. We'll trade some slaves for the privilege of testing ourselves against true predators. Unless, of course, you're as toothless as the rest of the Federation believes. The recording ended with Krextall's harsh laughter echoing through the empty colony. Taeho stared at the coordinates displayed on his screen. The shattered nebula was a dangerous region, filled with gravitational anomalies and radiation storms. Ships that entered rarely returned. It was the perfect place for criminals to hide their operations. Sir, Sojin said quietly. Federation Command has been trying to contact us. They know we're here. Taeho ignored the blinking communication alerts. Daun, what's the status on those life signs you detected earlier? Chief Engineer Daun's voice came from the engine room, tight with worry. 17 human biosignatures from medical scanners. One of them is my brother's. They're alive but getting weaker. That confirmed Taeho's worst fears. The harvesters had not taken everyone. They had left a few prisoners behind as bait, knowing that humans would never abandon their own people. This entire situation was a trap designed to exploit humanity's greatest weakness, their inability to leave anyone behind. Captain, Junseo reported from the colony. I found the processing records. The harvesters sorted everyone by species and destination. Most went to slave markets in the outer worlds. But the humans, his voice trailed off. What about the humans, Junseo? They're being taken to Maw's End for conditioning before auction. Captain, the records show what that means. They break people there, physically and mentally, turn them into completely obedient slaves. Taeho looked around his bridge. His crew watched him with expressions ranging from anger to determination. They all understood the situation now. The harvesters had taken 15,000 civilians and were using human compassion as a weapon against them. Come to Maw's End and walk into a trap, or abandon innocent people to torture and slavery. Either choice meant the harvesters won. Sir, Wubin said carefully, Federation Command is demanding an immediate response to their communications. How long to reach the shattered nebula? Taeho asked instead. 18 hours at maximum speed. But Captain, it's a suicide mission. The nebula is a ship graveyard. Even if we somehow reach Maw's End, we'd be one ship against their entire operation. Taeho studied the star charts showing the route to the shattered nebula. Navigation hazards marked the path in red. Warning beacons indicated radiation levels that could kill unprotected crews. Ancient wrecks drifted in gravitational fields that could crush starships. All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship, now's your chance. We're about to attempt something that violates every rule of common sense. Silence filled the bridge. No one moved toward the exit. Dayun, Taeho continued. How long can you keep the engines running in high radiation environment? Long enough, Captain. Wubin, what weapons do we have for fighting harvester ships? Not enough, sir, but enough to make them remember us. Sojin, Can you slice into their communication systems? Already working on it, Captain. Tejo smiled grimly. His crew was ready to follow him into certain death because innocent people needed help. This was what the Federation never understood about Deathworlders. They were not violent because they enjoyed killing. They were violent because they could not stand to see others suffer. Set course for the Shattered Nebula, he ordered, and send a message to War Master Krextall. Tell him the Deathworlders are coming. The journey to the Shattered Nebula tested every system on the Indomitable. Captain Tejo watched radiation warnings flash across his screens as they moved deeper into the dangerous region. Ancient gravitational anomalies pulled at their ship, while stellar debris created navigation hazards that could destroy them in seconds. Navigator O. Ginny worked at her station with intense concentration. The young woman had joined Tejo's crew only 6 months ago, but she had already proven her skills in dangerous space. Now those skills were being tested beyond their limits. Traditional sensors are useless here, Ginny reported. Too much interference from the radiation storms. I'm navigating by instinct and guesswork. Can you get us through? Tejo asked. Maybe. The old Earth exploration ships used similar techniques when they first left the solar system. Before we had Federation guidance computers, humans had to feel their way through space. Tactical Specialist Wu Bin looked up from his station. Contact on sensors. Multiple ships all dead in space. The main screen showed a massive graveyard of starships drifting in the nebula's twisted space. Vessels from dozens of different species floated among the asteroids and radiation clouds. Some were ancient designs that had not been used for centuries. Others looked like they had died only recently. Those are Harvester weapon marks, Weapons Officer Nam Sung Ho observed, studying the damage patterns on nearby wrecks. Every ship here tried to reach Maw's End and failed. Science Officer He Jin ran detailed scans of the graveyard. Captain, these attacks span hundreds of years. The Harvesters haven't just been raiding randomly. They've been systematically eliminating anyone who gets too close to their operation. Tejo studied the wreckage around them. Altarian science ships had tried to investigate and died. Vegan merchant vessels had attempted rescue missions and been destroyed. Even heavily armed Corvin warships had failed to penetrate the Harvester defenses. How many ships? He asked. Over 3,000, Yejin replied. Representatives from every major species in the galaxy. They all thought they could stop the Harvesters. The crew fell silent as they absorbed the magnitude of failure surrounding them. Thousands of ships, tens of thousands of crew members, all destroyed while trying to do what the Indomitable was attempting now. Sir, Communications Officer Sojin called out. I'm detecting active signals ahead. Massive energy signatures. Maw's End finally came into view on the main screen. Tejo had expected a space station. Instead, he saw something that made his blood freeze. The Harvester facility was built from the bones of dead ships. Massive alien vessels had been welded together into a sprawling complex that stretched for kilometers through space. Weapon emplacements covered every surface. Docking bays gaped like hungry mouths between sections of twisted hull plating. My God, Jinne whispered. They built their station from all the ships they destroyed. Long-range scans confirmed thousands of life signs aboard the station, Wu Bin reported. Multiple species, all in containment areas. Tejo felt sick as he realized the full scope of the Harvester operation. For centuries, they had been capturing slaves from across the galaxy. Every ship in the graveyard represented not just destroyed crews, but entire populations sold into slavery. Captain, Sojin said urgently, Harvester ships are moving to intercept us. 27 vessels in attack formation. Tejo looked at the tactical display showing enemy ships surrounding their position. The Indomitable was completely outnumbered. Any conventional attack would result in their quick destruction, but something about the ship graveyard gave him an idea. Wu Bin, how many of those wrecks still have functional weapon systems? Maybe a dozen, sir. Their power cores are dead, but the weapons might work if we could give them energy. Dayun, can we slave our reactor to power multiple ships? Chief Engineer Daun's voice came over the intercom. For a few minutes, maybe. We'd be running at dangerous overload levels. Security Chief Junseo, how many boarding pods do we carry? 16, Captain. Tejo smiled with grim satisfaction. Then we're not attacking alone. We're attacking with the ghosts of everyone the Harvesters killed. His plan was desperate but simple. Use the Indomitable's power to briefly reactivate weapon systems on nearby wrecks, creating the illusion of a much larger attack force. While the harvesters scrambled to respond to multiple threats, boarding teams would infiltrate Ma's End to locate and rescue the prisoners. "Sir," Sojin interrupted, "I'm monitoring harvester communications. They're not just expecting us. They're excited about our arrival." "What do you mean?" "This whole encounter is being broadcast to harvester fleets across the galaxy. They're treating it like entertainment. Deathworlders walking into certain doom while trying to save their precious civilians." Taeho felt cold anger settle in his stomach. The harvesters were not just planning to kill his crew. They wanted to break them publicly, prove that human compassion was a fatal weakness that could be exploited. "They want to make an example of us," he said to his crew. "Show the galaxy that Deathworlders can be manipulated and destroyed like anyone else." "Captain," Heejin observed quietly, "they're assuming we came here to rescue prisoners and escape, that we'll try to negotiate or find some way to save lives while preserving our own." Taeho looked at his crew, Sojin monitoring enemy communications with professional calm, Wubin calculating weapon ranges and approach vectors, Jinei plotting navigation routes through the dangerous station defenses, Junseo preparing boarding equipment in the security bay. They were Deathworlders serving aboard a ship named Indomitable. Their planet had tried to kill them every day of their evolution, so they had learned to be unkillable. The Federation had spent centuries trying to civilize them, to make them follow rules and respect authority. But there were no Federation rules in the Shattered Nebula. No authority except what they chose to recognize. "All hands listen carefully," Taeho announced over the ship's communication system. "The harvesters expect us to negotiate. They think we'll try to save some prisoners and escape with our lives. They believe human compassion makes us predictable and weak." He paused, watching Ma's End grow larger on the main screen. Weapon emplacements tracked their approach while harvester ships moved into attack positions. "They're wrong. We didn't come here despite our compassion. We came here because of it, and they've just made their final mistake." "What mistake, sir?" Wubin asked. Taeho's expression changed into something cold and predatory. The look was not angry or emotional. It was the focused calm of an apex predator that had finally stopped pretending to be harmless. "They assumed we came here to negotiate with slavers." He activated the ship's battle station's alarm. Red lights bathed the bridge as combat systems came online. "All teams. New mission parameters. We're not extracting prisoners and retreating. We're extracting prisoners and ending this operation permanently. No negotiations with slavers. No survivors among the harvester leadership." The bridge crew looked at their captain with new understanding. They were not conducting a rescue mission. They were conducting an execution. "Warmaster Krextall wanted to test Deathworlders," Taeho continued. "Let's give him the full experience." On the main screen, Ma's End waited like a mechanical spider in its web of destroyed ships. But for the first time since entering the Shattered Nebula, Captain Taeho felt confident about their mission. The harvesters had made one critical error in their calculations. They thought Deathworlders were just another species that could be intimidated and manipulated. They were about to learn the difference between a predator and an apex predator. The attack began exactly as Captain Taeho planned. Chief Engineer Da-Un pushed their reactor beyond safe limits, sending power to 12 derelict ships floating in the graveyard around Ma's End. For brief moments, the dead vessels came alive again with weapon fire and engine burns. From the harvester perspective, it looked like a massive fleet assault. Energy beams lanced out from multiple directions as the ghost ships fired their final shots. Harvester defenders scattered to meet threats that seemed to come from everywhere at once. While the enemy responded to phantom attacks, the Indomitable slipped through their defensive perimeter like a blade between ribs. Navigator Jinei guided them past sensor stations and weapon platforms with skills that no other species could match. Humans had learned to navigate by instinct when they first explored space, and those abilities served them well in the chaotic battle around Ma's End. Boarding teams away, Security Chief Junseo reported as 16 assault pods launched from the Indomitable. Each pod carried a 4-person team equipped for combat in hostile environments, but the first reports from inside Ma's End revealed horrors that none of them had expected. "Team Alpha to bridge." Junseo's voice came through the communication system, tight with controlled anger. "We found the processing facilities. Captain, you need to see this." Video feeds from the boarding teams appeared on the bridge screens. Taeho watched his people move through corridors lined with holding cells. Inside each cell, Prisoners from dozens of different species waited in conditions that made his stomach turn. The harvesters had turned slavery into an industrial process. Different sections of the station handled different stages of conditioning. New prisoners were sorted by species, age, and physical capabilities. Those who resisted were sent to punishment areas where systematic torture broke their will to fight. Cooperative prisoners were moved to training sections where they learned complete obedience to their future masters. Team Beta reporting, came Chief Engineer Daeyun's voice. She was leading the search for human prisoners while her engineering teams worked to disable station systems. Found the premium stockholding area. They've got humans separated by age and physical condition. On screen, Taeho saw rows of cells containing human prisoners. Children, adults, elderly people, all cataloged like products waiting for sale. Signs above each section listed market value and recommended uses in multiple alien languages. Team Charlie has located the central data core, Science Officer Hyejin reported. Captain, this operation is bigger than we thought. Records show millions of slaves processed through this station over centuries. The scope of the harvester operation staggered Taeho's imagination. For hundreds of years, they had been systematically kidnapping people from across the galaxy. Entire colonies had disappeared. Whole species had been reduced to scattered survivors hiding in remote systems. But the worst discovery came when Daewon found her brother. Minho is alive, she reported, her voice carefully controlled. But Captain, they've done things to these people. Psychological conditioning. Some of them are afraid to leave their cells. That was when War Master Krextol began his final gambit. The alien's voice boomed through Maz N's communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies so that every boarding team could hear him clearly. Deathworlders, Krextol snarled. Your precious morality has brought you into my web. For every minute you remain aboard my station, 10 slaves die. Withdraw now and I'll only kill half your people. Stay, and I'll make their deaths last for days. To emphasize his threat, video screens throughout the station showed harvester guards entering prisoner-holding areas. The alien selected 10 random slaves, 2 humans, 3 Altarians, 4 vegans, and 1 elderly Corvin, and executed them while the cameras recorded everything. This was the moment Krextol had been building toward. Force the humans to choose between tactical success and innocent lives. Prove that compassion made them predictably vulnerable to manipulation. But Taeho's response shocked everyone listening to the broadcast. War Master Krextol, the captain's voice came through every speaker on the station, calm and completely without emotion. You misunderstand our nature. We didn't come here despite our compassion. We came here because of it, and you've just made a fatal error. What error, Deathworlder? You assumed we were here to negotiate. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Weapons Officer Nam Seung-ho watched his captain's face transform into something that had been hidden beneath centuries of Federation civilization. The expression was not angry or emotional. It was the cold calculation of an apex predator that had finally decided to stop pretending to be harmless. All teams, new objectives, Taeho broadcast on secure channels that only his people could hear. We're not extracting prisoners and leaving. We're extracting prisoners and ending this operation permanently. No negotiations. No mercy for anyone involved in slave operations. The tone of the entire mission changed in that moment. Human boarding teams stopped using stun weapons on harvester guards and switched to lethal force. Engineering teams stopped bypassing critical systems and began overloading them to cause maximum damage. Intelligence teams stopped gathering information and started corrupting harvester databases to eliminate centuries of slave trading records. What are you doing? Krextol's voice carried uncertainty for the first time. What you asked for, Taeho replied with terrifying calm, a demonstration of Deathworlder capabilities without Federation oversight. The systematic destruction of Maz End became a masterclass in human warfare. While other species fought battles to achieve specific objectives, humans revealed something that had been carefully hidden beneath their civilized surface. They were naturally gifted at total warfare. Junseo's security teams did not just neutralize guards. They hunted down every harvester who had participated in slave operations, using the station's own personnel records to identify targets. No mercy was shown to anyone who had loaded prisoners into cells, operated torture equipment, or processed slaves for sale. Daeyun's engineering teams did not just disable systems. They created cascading failures that would make the entire station uninhabitable. Power conduits were overloaded to cause fires. Life support systems were programmed to fail in specific sequences. Structural supports were weakened so that the station would tear itself apart. Yijin's intelligence teams did not just gather data. They systematically corrupted every harvester computer system, erasing slave trading networks, buyer information, and operational records. Centuries of criminal enterprise were being deleted with surgical precision. The rescued prisoners watched in fascination and horror as their human rescuers transformed from compassionate protectors into something far more terrifying. Dr. Lim Subin, Kepler Colony's former medical officer who had been captured during the raid, observed the methodical destruction with professional interest. "I've studied human psychology for decades," she whispered to Daun's brother, Minho, as they watched Junseo's team systematically eliminate guard posts. "I thought I understood your species, but this is something else entirely." Minho, still weak from captivity but alert enough to understand what was happening, managed a grim smile. "This is what we were before the Federation civilized us. This is why they call us Deathworlders." The revelation spread through both the rescued prisoners and the remaining harvester forces. The Federation had not been protecting other species from human aggression. It had been protecting humans from fully expressing their nature as apex predators. War Master Krextol, barricaded in the station's command center with his remaining guards, began to understand the trap he had walked into. His broadcast to other harvester fleets grew increasingly desperate. "They're not just soldiers," he transmitted on emergency frequencies. "They don't fight like other species. They don't think like other species. Abort any operations near human space immediately." But it was too late. The Indomitable's communication systems had been recording every harvester transmission since the battle began. The locations of other slave operations, the identities of buyers, the coordinates of processing facilities. Everything was being systematically cataloged for future action. When Taeho finally reached the command center, Krextol attempted one final negotiation. "Kill me if you must, human, but leave my people alive." They were following orders. Taeho studied the alien commander who had overseen centuries of systematic slavery. Behind Krextol, displays showed the scope of the harvester operation. Millions of sentient beings, processed through torture and conditioning, before being sold to buyers across the galaxy. "Your people had a choice every time they loaded prisoners into those cells," Taeho said quietly. "Every time they separated families, every time they broke someone who was begging for mercy. We are predators. We were following our nature." "So are we," Taeho replied. "But we learned to choose our prey." 6 months after the destruction of Maw's End, the galactic criminal underworld had changed completely. Harvester fleets that had operated for centuries were gone, eliminated by human strike teams that appeared without warning and left no survivors. Slave markets had closed rather than risk visits from Deathworlder enforcers. Pirates had begun avoiding any shipping routes that might contain human cargo. The change started immediately after Captain Taeho's mission. Within days of Maw's End's destruction, every major criminal organization in the galaxy received the same message: a complete database of harvester operations, buyer networks, and slave processing facilities. The data came with coordinates and a simple promise: Deathworlders were hunting. But the most significant change was happening in Federation Council chambers on the core world of Centauri Prime. Captain Lee, Taeho stood before a tribunal of alien officials, officially charged with insubordination, unauthorized military action, and destruction of private property. The charges would normally result in court-martial and imprisonment. But the political situation had become complicated in ways the Federation had never experienced. Admiral Veltar, the same Centaurian bureaucrat who had dismissed the original Kepler distress call, sat at the prosecutor's table looking deeply uncomfortable. For 6 months, he had been trying to explain why Earth forces consistently violated direct orders and why their violations had eliminated more galactic crime than official operations had managed in decades. "Captain Taeho," began Counselor Rixton, an elderly Vorthan statesman who chaired the tribunal, "you stand accused of deliberately disobeying Federation command, conducting unauthorized military operations in neutral space, and destroying a facility that was technically located in unclaimed territory." Taeho remained at attention, his uniform bearing the insignia of a ship that no longer officially existed. The Indomitable had been recalled to Earth after the Maw's End incident, her crew reassigned to different vessels. The Federation wanted to pretend the entire episode had never happened. How do you plead to these charges? Rixton continued. Guilty as charged, Counselor. Murmurs went through the chamber. Most defendants tried to justify their actions or claim they were following higher authorities. Tejo's simple admission of guilt surprised everyone present. Captain, Rixton said carefully, are you aware that these charges carry penalties of up to 20 years imprisonment? I am, sir. Then perhaps you would like to explain your actions to this tribunal. Tejo looked around the chamber at representatives from 17 different species. Most had never set foot on a death world. None had ever faced the kind of enemies that humans dealt with regularly on the frontier. Counselor, on the day we received the Kepler distress call, this tribunal's official response was to dispatch a relief mission in 6 weeks, standard procedure for Outer Rim incidents. But 15,000 civilians were being processed by harvester slavers. In 6 weeks they would all have been sold and scattered across the galaxy. Federation protocols exist for good reasons, Captain. We cannot have individual commanders deciding which orders to follow. With respect, Counselor, Federation protocols assume that enemies will wait for proper authorization before committing atrocities. Admiral Veltar stood up from his seat. Captain Tejo, you had no authority to engage harvester forces. Your actions violated every principle of civilized military conduct. Admiral, with respect, slavers are not civilized enemies. They don't respond to diplomacy or follow rules of engagement. They understand only force. The testimony continued for 3 days. Alien officials questioned every aspect of the Maw's End operation, trying to understand how a single human ship had accomplished what entire Federation fleets had failed to achieve. But the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source. The rescued slaves themselves. Dr. Lim Su-bin, speaking for the Kepler colony survivors, provided evidence that changed everything. For 3 centuries, you've kept humans on the Outer Rim because you feared their aggressive nature. You called them too dangerous for civilized space. But when we needed someone capable of true aggression, controlled, targeted, professional aggression, only they answered the call. Her testimony was followed by representatives from 17 different species, all rescued from harvester operations that human forces had eliminated over the past 6 months. Each told the same story. Human teams had appeared without warning, extracted prisoners without casualties, and eliminated criminal operations with surgical precision. The human forces showed unprecedented restraint with civilians while demonstrating unprecedented efficiency against confirmed criminals, testified Merchant Captain Zil Nara, whose Altarian crew had been rescued from a slave processing ship. No innocent casualties, no collateral damage, surgical precision in eliminating threats. The pattern was consistent across dozens of operations. Human forces had developed techniques that seemed impossible by Federation standards. Boarding actions that extracted prisoners without losing a single rescue, intelligence operations that dismantled criminal networks without harming innocent associates, combat operations that eliminated threats without affecting nearby civilian populations. The tribunal faced an uncomfortable truth. Humanity's dangerous nature made them uniquely qualified for problems the Federation could not solve through diplomacy or conventional military action. Captain Tejo, Counselor Rixton said on the final day of testimony, this tribunal has reviewed 17 separate incidents where human forces conducted unauthorized operations against criminal organizations. In every case, you achieved objectives that conventional Federation forces had declared impossible. We did what was necessary, Counselor. Indeed, but your methods raised disturbing questions about Federation military doctrine. How do you explain such consistent success against enemies that have defeated our best ships and most experienced commanders? Tejo considered his answer carefully. The truth was simple but uncomfortable for most species to accept. Counselor, humans evolved on a death world. Our planet tried to kill us every day, so we learned to kill first. Other species developed civilization to escape from violence. Humans developed violence to protect civilization. Are you suggesting that human aggression is somehow superior to civilized methods? I'm suggesting that predators don't fear civilized methods, sir. They only understand other predators. The final testimony came from the most unexpected source of all. The Kari survivor Vexnal, the only harvester who had survived the Maw's End operation. He was a maintenance worker, who had not been involved in slave operations, spared specifically to deliver a message. They gave me coordinates, he told the tribunal in broken Federation standard. Locations of 63 hidden slave facilities. They could have eliminated them all in secret, but they wanted you to know. Deathworlders don't hide their hunting. The message was clear. Earth forces were going to continue anti-slavery operations whether the Federation approved or not. The only question was whether the Federation wanted to be involved in the decision-making process. Counselor Rixton looked around the chamber at his fellow tribunal members. Representatives from 17 species faced the same uncomfortable choice. Embrace human methods or watch the galaxy's criminal underworld continue to operate, while conventional forces filed proper reports. Captain Te-Ho, Rixton said finally, this tribunal finds you guilty of all charges as specified. You deliberately violated direct orders, conducted unauthorized military operations, and destroyed private property without proper authorization. Te-Ho remained at attention, ready to accept whatever punishment they decided. However, Rixton continued, this tribunal also recognizes that your actions resulted in the rescue of over 40,000 civilians and the elimination of criminal operations that conventional forces had failed to stop for centuries. The chamber fell, silent as alien officials struggled with a decision that challenged everything they believed about civilized military conduct. Therefore, this tribunal sentences you to official censure for violation of orders and unofficial promotion to Commodore, with command of the newly formed Human Anti-Piracy Task Force. Your new assignment: operations in regions where conventional Federation forces have proven ineffective. The solution was elegant and practical. Officially, Te-Ho was punished for his actions. Unofficially, he was given broader authority to continue doing exactly what he had been doing. 6 weeks later, Commodore Lee Te-Ho stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, his flagship for expanded anti-slavery operations. His crew had grown to include survivors from dozens of species, all volunteers who preferred serving alongside Deathworlders to waiting for official Federation protection. Sir, Communications Officer So-Jin reported, incoming distress signals from multiple systems. Slave raids, pirate attacks, criminal operations. Te-Ho looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere in that darkness, innocent people were suffering while bureaucrats debated proper procedures. But now there was a new factor in the galactic balance of power. Predators still hunted the weak across the galaxy, but now the weak had Deathworlders hunting the predators. Set course for the Terminus system, Te-Ho ordered. Someone there called for help, and Deathworlders always answer.